Good morning, everyone. So, this is our third unit, which we are going to start today on rules of statutory interpretation. Previously, we have done with the introductory part as to meaning, purpose, scope of interpretation of statutes, its nature, their classification. Then, in the second unit, we have done internal aids to interpretation and external aids. In internal aids, we have done title, preamble, heading, marginal notes. From external aids, interpretation, parliamentary history, judicial precedents, dictionaries, etc., and so many things. So we have done it. Now coming to the third unit, which is rules of statutory interpretation. Now, let us understand this. Statutory interpretation. Our very first thing is statutory interpretation is the process. See, this we can divide it into two parts: statutory interpretation and non-statutory. In non-statutory, we have rules, many rules like mischief rule, golden rule, another rule, literal rule for interpreting a statute. But then, what is the statutory interpretation? It is the process of interpreting and applying legislation to decide the case. So the process of interpreting and applying the legislation. What we do in statutory is we apply the legislation to decide the case for interpreting. Now interpretation is necessary when case involves subtle or ambiguous aspect of a statute. Generally the words of a statute have a plain and straightforward meaning, but in some cases there may be ambiguity or vagueness in the words of the statute. So, in some statute, there will be a straightforward meaning for which you need not interpret it. You can understand it easily. But then, in some cases, there will be confusions or vagueness in word. For that, you need to refer to the statute and need to, in the words of the statute, that must be resolved by the judge. Now, the reason for ambiguity or vagueness of a legislation is the fundamental nature of language. So, it is not always possible to precisely transform the intention of the legislature into written words. Now, this is what statutory. For statutory interpretation, we can suppose if we want to know the meaning of this term property. Okay, so what we will do? We will see the General Clauses Act, or we will see the property Transfer of Property Act, and we'll try to understand the meaning of it. If at all there is some ambiguity or vagueness in the term. This is an example I am citing. Now, in the non-statutory interpretation, we have some rules. So that is what we are going to study. This is what it is about, the rules of statutory interpretation. The first one here is primary rules, that is literal rule. Now what does it say? So you can read it. Now this is the first rule of interpretation, and according to this rule, the words, first let's read this. It means that statutes are to be interpreted using the ordinary meaning of the language of the statute unless the statute explicitly defines some of its terms. Otherwise, in other words, the law must be read word for word and it should not divert from its true meaning. So here, according to this rule, understand this, that the words which are used in this text are to be given their natural meaning. It has to be interpreted in their ordinary meaning. Natural or ordinary meaning. Whatever the words are given in the text, we have to interpret its natural meaning. Now, after the interpretation, if the meaning is completely clear and there is no confusion, then the effect will be given to the provision of the statute. Now, this basic rule is that, what does this basic rule means? That whatever may be the intention of a legislature will be while they are making this provision, it is expressed through words. And now these words are to be interpreted according to the rules of grammar, So it is the safest rule of interpretation of statutes, because the intention of the it is the safest rule of interpretation of statutes because the intention of the legislature is deduced from the words and the language which is used. Now, in this rule, so altogether you have to understand that the duty of court will be to give the effect of the language of statute its plain meaning, and they don't have to look into any other consequences whichever would arise, but they just have to give a plain meaning. Now there are some cases. See, according to this rule, when a word does not contain any definition in statute, we further read it, it must be given its plain, ordinary and literal meaning. Now if the word is clear, it must be applied. But if it is not clear, and when the word does not contain any definition in a statute, then it has to give its plain, ordinary, literal meaning. So the literal rule is what the law says instead of what the law means. We don't have to understand what the law is, what is meant by the law, but what does the law says. So this is the oldest of the rules of construction and is still used today, primarily because judges are not supposed to legislate, as there is always the danger that a particular interpretation may be equivalent of making law. Some judges prefer to adhere to law's literal wording. Now there is some case, Maqbul Hussain versus State of Bombay. Now what exactly happened in this case, I'll explain. The appellant in the case, he was a Indian citizen. Now after arriving at the airport, he did not declare that he was carrying gold with him. So he was carrying gold and did not declare it. Now while there was search, on searching him, they found gold. Gold was found in his possession. Now this was against the notification of the government and was confiscated under 167(8) of Sea Customs Act. Then he was charged under this section 8 of Foreign Exchange Regulation Act 1947. But the appellant challenged his trial to be violative under Article 22 of the Indian Constitution. So according to this article, according to Article 22, what happens? That no person shall be punished or prosecuted more than once for the same offence. This is called double jeopardy. Now it was held by the court that Seas Act, neither a court nor any judicial tribunal. See, so he was prosecuted for two things, right? He was charged under 167(8) of Sea Customs Act, and later on again he was charged under the Foreign Exchange Regulation Act. So it was held by court that Seas Act, under which he was the first one, Sea Customs Act. So the court held the Seas Act is neither a court or any judicial tribunal. Therefore, he was not prosecuted earlier, and hence his trial was held to be valid. So that was a case under it. Moving on to the mischief rule. So you can see this is a case of Maqbul Hussain versus State of Bombay. It's a very popular case. I'll just mention it here. Maqbul Hussain. You just see the full. Okay, I'll write it. Oh. Maqbul Hussain versus State of Bombay. So you can see this. Alright. So we don't have board, so we have to do it like that. Alright. This is Maqbul Hussain versus State of Bombay under the literal rule. Now moving on to the mischief rule. What does this mischief rule says? So this rule attempts to determine the legislator's intention. The one who is making the law, it determines what is the intention of him while making a rule, making a law. Now originating from a 16th century case in UK, its main aim is to determine the mischief and defect. Like, what is the defect? What is the mischief that the statute in the question has set out to remedy, and what ruling would effectively implement this remedy? So mischief rule was originated in this Hayden's case. Alright. Here it is mentioned. So mischief rule is used by judges in statutory interpretation in order to discover legislature intention. It is essentially asks the question by creating an act of parliament, what was the mischief? See, so understand this. It is the rule of purposive construction. Why? Because the purpose of this statute is very important while applying this rule. That's what I said here. The rule attempts to determine the legislator intention. Like, what is the purpose of this statute? So this is known as a Hayden's rule because it was given by Lord Pope in Hayden's case in 1584. Here I have mentioned it, Sir John Hayden's case, 1584. Lord Pope. Now it is called mischief rule because the focus is on curing that mischief. What is the reason why we call it a mischief rule? Because it is completely focused over how to cure that mischief, how to cure that defect which is there under the statute. Now there is some rules which is given under the Hayden's case. There are 4 things which has to be followed for true and a complete sure interpretation of all the statutes in general. Now what are those 4 rules? These are the complete 4. What was the common law before the making of the act? So we have to see the past, that what was the law before making of the act, what was the mischief or the defect for which the common law did not provide. Now what is the defect? In it, what remedy the parliament? Third thing talks about the remedy. Second thing talks about the what is the defect or mischief, and what was the common law before. It talks about what was before the law before making of the act. Now third is what remedy the parliament have solved and appointed to cure the disease of the commonwealth. So it talks about remedy, and fourth is what is the true reason of the remedy. So the purpose of this rule is to suppress the mischief and advance the remedy. So we can suppress the defect and we can advance the remedy. This is what the case is. Now I have mentioned here this one case, Smith versus Hills. What happened in this? This is a case around 1960. Now the prostitutes were soliciting in the streets of London under this case, and it was creating a huge problem in London. So this was causing a great problem in maintaining law and order. Now to prevent this problem, Street Offence Act was enacted. Now after the enactment of this Street Offence Act, prostitutes started soliciting from windows and balconies. So earlier they would do, prostitutes were soliciting in the streets of London, and later they started doing soliciting from windows and balconies after the act came, Street and Offence Act 1959. Now further, prostitutes who were carrying to solicit from streets and balconies, they were charged under section 1 of the Street Offence Act, whatever it was there at that time. Now but the prostitutes, they pleaded that they were not solicited from the streets. Now, court held that although they were not soliciting from the streets, yet the mischief rule must be applied to prevent the soliciting by prostitutes and shall look into the issue. Now, thus, by applying, here they apply the mischief rule, and by applying this, court held that windows and balconies were taken to be an extension of the word street, and here, therefore, they can be they were charged valid. Their charge sheet was held to be correct. So they took the meaning of the street, which was said to prevent the soliciting on the street. They enacted an act. But after that, prostitutes started soliciting from windows and balconies, and later when they were charged, they pleaded that they are now soliciting from streets. So the court simply held that although they are not soliciting from street, but still if we apply mischief rule, if we apply the mischief rule, and it should be applied to prevent the soliciting by prostitute. The whole issue should be this, that they have to prevent the soliciting. So court said that windows and balconies are also an extension of the word street, of which the prostitutes were talking about. This is the Smith and Hugh case under mischief rule. Then there is this Hayden case where 4 things are given. After that, moving on to the golden rule. So the application of this rule gives the judge more discretion than literal and golden rule. Alright, here golden rule. Now this is very important. See, first let us read this. So it is a compromise between the plain meaning or literal rule and the mischief rule. So it is a compromise between the first rule which we read, literal rule, and mischief rule, the second rule. How? The question arises. So like the plain meaning rule, it gives the words of a statute their plain ordinary meaning. However, when this may lead to an irrational result that is unlikely to be the legislature intention, the judge can depart from this meaning. So in this case of homographs, where a word can have more than one meaning, the judge can choose the preferred meaning. So if the word has one meaning and applying this meaning would lead to a bad decision, the judge can apply a completely different meaning. See, understand, it is known as the golden rule because it solves all the problem of the interpretation. First thing, why do we call it a golden rule? Because it is solving all the problem of interpretation. Now, the rule says that now what does this rule says? It says that to start with, we shall go by the literal rule. Okay? While starting, we are going with the literal rule. But however, if the interpretation given through the literal rule is still not solved, or it is leading to some kind of confusion or ambiguity or injustice or inconvenience, some inequity, or there is hardship in still finding the meaning of it, then in that case literal meaning is discarded and interpretation has to be done in a manner that the purpose of the legislation is fulfilled. Now the literal rule follows the concept of interpreting the natural meaning of the words as we have read it in the first rule, right? Now natural meaning which are used in the statute, but if interpreting natural meaning it is still leading to some sort of absurdity or a hardship, then court will modify the meaning. So this rule suggests, this golden rule suggests that the consequences and effect of interpretation, they deserves a lot and more important because they are the clues of the true meaning of the words which are used by the legislature and in intention. So while applying this rule, that at times interpretation may be done entirely, it can be opposite to literal rule, but it shall be justified because of the golden rule. I'll explain you well with the case laws. So it is a very useful rule in construction of statute, as it allows to adhere to the ordinary meaning of the words used and to grammatically construction, unless that it is at variance with the intention of the legislature to be collected from the statute itself. See, this rule may be used in two ways. It is applied most frequently in a narrow sense, where there is some ambiguity or absurdity. As I said, for example, understand this example now. Imagine there may be a sign saying do not use lift in case of fire. So that there are these signs written. So there is the sign saying do not use the lift in case of fire. Now under the literal interpretation of this sign, people must never use the lifts. This is what the literal interpretation says, that do not use lift in case of fire. The literal people must never use the lift in case there is fire. This is what the literal meaning is. But however, this will be absurd result, as the intention of the person who made the sign is obviously to prevent people from using the lifts only if there is currently a fire nearby. So if currently there is a nearby fire, then only this was the intention. But the literal interpretation was, which comes out seeing this, is that people must never use the lift in case there is a fire. So thus golden rule implies that if a strict interpretation of statute would lead to an absurd result, that is what happened now. On a strict interpretation of statute is leading to an absurd result, then the meaning of the words should be so construed. We have to deduct a conclusion so as to lead to the avoidance of such absurdity. This is what golden rule implies. Okay, so this is an end. Now, so understand this. There is this case of state of Madhya Pradesh versus Azad Bharat Financial Company. Now what happened in this case, there was this issue. A transporting company was carrying a parcel of apples and was challenged and charge sheeted. Alright. Now the truck of the transporting company, it was impounded as the parcel contained opium along with the apples. So they were containing a opium. Now at the same time, the invoice shown for the transport consisted of apples only. Now section 11 of Opium Act, it said that all the vehicles which transport the contraband articles shall be impounded and articles shall be confiscated. So it was confiscated by transport company, that they were unaware of the fact that opium is also loaded with the apples in the truck. They said this, but court held that although the words contained in section 11 of the said act, they provide that vehicles shall be confiscated, but by applying the literal rule of interpretation, it is leading to the injustice or iniquity, and therefore this interpretation will be avoided and shall be confiscated. The word that is shall be confiscated should be interpreted as may be confiscated. So this is a case of on golden rule. That's it. These were the three major important rules. Literal rule, then is this mischief rule, and golden rule. Thank you. And in the next class we will be doing about we'll do about the secondary rules. Rules of the statutory interpretation only. All right. Thank you.